that. I apologize.
Can I still call us to order at 2:02?
Yeah.
Okay. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the February meeting. Has anybody had a chance to read them? Oh, thank you. Actually, it's of the March meeting. We already approved the February ones, right?
Yes, correct. It does say.
No, I was looking at the minutes themselves.
Oh wait, how does that say February? I changed
doesn't.
that. Okay. Well, I will change that.
At the thing I was at the, I just did that. And now, but if you look at the date on that, it's got March up at the top.
Yes, it is the March.
Right. The March minutes.
I changed that. Okay.
No, it should say February.
It's correct.
It should say, oh, okay.
Because in March you approved the February.
Oh, that's right. That's right. So there's 3 dates. That's right. The minutes always have 3 dates. Thank you, Karen.
Would anyone like to make a motion regarding the minutes we've just discussed?
I think Marie signaled that she did. Your microphone is on mute.
I think Kim's may be also.
Mine is? Oh, goodness. Hold on.
There you go. We hear
I'm
you.
good?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Does that mean you'd like to move approval?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Marie, did you want to make that second?
Oh, I thought she was the first.
I think that was Kim.
Oh, okay. And Matt's here with us now.
Mm-hmm.
And Adam's here. Yay, Adam.
Yeah. All right. Would anybody like to make any additions, corrections, or ask for clarifications on the minutes? And all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Who was that? Was that you, Kim, that seconded? Or in favor?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All righty. Let me get this thing off of there. Flip the agenda.
Thank you. And now we're at the solid waste recommendation, the action items. Who would like to talk to the first one about the recycling carts?
That would be Karen.
Yes, this is basically the same thing that we that I shared at the advisory committee. And it is in the PowerPoint that Diane has. I can go over it all again, but there's nothing different. Or maybe at this point, maybe you have some questions that you didn't have when I first shared that, or I can talk about it again, whatever you all prefer.
One of the questions that I've been asked is, what is the source of the money? And does it have to be spent only in the urban services district?
Well, the money is from the Recycling Partnership, CERDIC, and other funding partners under the Recycling Partnership. And Pete?
Yeah, we actually, I think when we discussed this at the 109 board, that was one of the questions that was asked. And the money for this particular grant is very specific as to what we can do. We have a grant agreement. However, the funds for being able to do a second grant, or for another, if a home rule city wants to do a grant, that is absolutely okay. And we can actually, the Waste District would be willing to help work through that with that city, but it would have to be a specific grant agreement between the recycling partnership and that home rule city. So yeah, the money is for this is earmarked, but these grants are open to anybody, and the Waste District is more than willing to help anybody else receive a grant through the recycling partnership.
What about the unincorporated area
Well,
that's
it's
outside?
it is actually very complicated in the fact that you have up to 5 different haulers that could be on the same street. And at that point, it becomes something that is extremely difficult to be able to do. I'm not saying it's not possible, but many of those haulers, they actually, in some cases, I think that they charge a fee for the container. So I'm not sure if I think we'd have to explore that, but I almost feel like that the agreement would have to be with the haulers to a certain degree, but I'm not sure the recycling partnership would do that. It is definitely much more complicated when you get into an unincorporated area where you have multiple haulers.
And Pete, didn't the haulers state that the vast majority of the people who do subscribe to recycling already use 95-gallon carts?
They do. Most of the private companies made that switch a while back. I think that there is still, I'm not sure, Waste Management may be making that change, but they had been in bins. But for the most part, I think, yeah, they're in carts. Now, like I said, I think some of them charge like $1.25 monthly fee to be able to place that cart there. But I think that's going to be dependent upon the waste hauler.
Well, and technically there's a fee if you're on city service too. It's just that it's in your taxes.
Yeah, it's part of city taxes, but that's what we're getting this grant for.
Right,
Uh,
right, exactly.
When you have multiple people involved in the grant, the more difficult that would be.
Sure.
But you know, I can inquire. I think we would obviously love to get more people in that unincorporated areas with recycling carts. And if the cost of recycling carts is a barrier to that, we're more than willing to try to work around the issues. That's for sure. Did that answer your question, Sandra?
Yeah, that was excellent because I was thinking about my recent conversation was with someone in an unincorporated area, and they just don't have, at least they perceive they don't have access to the same amount of information services that the rest of us may have.
Well, that is the nature of the unincorporated areas.
I know.
It's when you have 5 haulers in an area, it's kind of like the Wild West to a certain degree. I mean, the service is good. It's the same haulers that collect in home rule cities. It's just the system is so much more difficult to do programs in because it's just way more complicated.
Thank you.
So as far as what I had, shared at the advisory committee meeting and this information, what Diane has on the screen is how that particular recommendation was written in the study. And then my little chart kind of shows, okay, well, what we're already doing does cover some of that, but maybe not all of that. And I guess maybe the question on this level is, do we want to, I guess, I don't know, like, are we wanting to say that this particular recommendation is in a design phase? Because isn't this the one that we already got approved to work on, but we never really made a design?
Yes, I think that due to COVID, we didn't just sit back and do nothing. And we felt like that this kind of fell into our lap a little bit, but it was a good opportunity. And I'm not sure who made the suggestion, but this could work as kind of a pilot program for the rest of the county in what it takes to have that residential education and marketing campaign when it comes to recycling, at least, and get some learnings there so that when it is possible to move it into other parts of the county, that we have some good learnings from it. So I think that's, while you're right, we had an approval to do it. We don't have a formal design, just like the recommendation says, but we don't have to do that. And I guess the committee kind of wanted to know a little bit more about these things and how what we was doing correlated to what the recommendations were, which is what, we're presenting on. So I guess you're right. The question comes back to the committee is what we're doing something that they feel like that, number one, it's a good use of time and effort and treating it like a pilot, or do they want to go further? So I guess the question is to the committee at this point. Do you want to go further based upon what we're doing now and what the recommendation says?
When you say go further, are you talking about going to a design phase on education and marketing for recycling and composting? Is that what we're talking about?
I think that's what we're talking about. It's kind of a difficult to make that jump.
Diane, can you flip to the chart of the slide? Yeah. So
That one?
so basically what I was saying was, okay, out of all the things that are listed in that recommendation, the items listed on the left can kind of qualify already, I think, under the recommendation, but the items on the right aren't really part of that. So when Pete says go further, I think part of my understanding is, okay, should we go further as in try to add more of what the recommendation said under this same program? And that could be wrong, but that's kind of what came to my mind, to see how we can kind of, I guess, be able to say, yes, we really tackled this particular recommendation.
I think you're right, Karen. I think that is kind of the question, whether or not that we go back to the board, the committee goes back to the board and says, hey, we want to wait. We want to watch this recycling cart grant and their education program through there before we move on to do some other things with this recommendation.
Yeah, because really, I mean, youth education, partnering with schools, outreach to multifamily properties, a lot of that actually hits outside of the USD. If we go in a classroom, we have no idea who we're talking to as far as where they live. They might be multifamily housing, they might be unincorporated or in a home rule city or whatever. So, if we tried to use some of our education and hit those areas, I feel like we would definitely be branching out. So it wouldn't necessarily be exactly the CART grant stuff, but the general idea of what we can recycle and then, backyard composting versus, I think yard waste would be the only thing that's hard. If you don't have yard waste collection, there's not a ton of options for you, but I guess the love them and leave them type of program. So I don't know.
Well, I would think the one thing that could translate out of there, and it's really part of what's on the left, is the Recycle More or the Recycle tagging program. That tagging program can work anywhere in the county right now. It's a matter of going and looking in the carts. If it's a home rule city that wants to see how their own people are working and how much contamination is in their recycling stream, that program can be exported to anywhere because it's, we might have to change some names and stuff like that. But the concept of that program could go anywhere.
And really, I don't think I listed it specifically. Well, the community-based social marketing kind of hits that a little bit, as far as the Recycle Right program. So I could be a little more explicit on that if we were going to share at board level.
Have there been any other discussions on what will be used of the 18-gallon bins that people currently have?
We're taking, Sarah Lynn's suggestion to allow people to repurpose them, maybe inside an organization like building or something. So, or if they're all just broken and beat up,
Sure.
recycle them. But yeah, we don't have like a specific way set out for that. It could be just, we can be proactive on it, or we can just kind of wait until something happens and people ask us. But we do like the idea of repurposing.
Well, and an easy win is you can go ahead and recycle the ones that are broken so they can get out of your inventory so you're not piled up with them, because I know that space is an issue. And then figure out how you're going to repurpose all of the other ones.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if we had a huge stack of them behind us, they could easily take pictures and share. And
Oh yeah, they're great bins. But keeping that is an option too. So even if you get a cart, you're going to be allowed to keep that 18-gallon bin if you choose.
Yes, you are allowed to keep it and reuse it yourself. We are going to have a date. At this point, the date is January 1st, where we're going to try to push people to say, we're not going to collect from your bins after January 1st.
Okay.
Is there anything else on that subject?
I guess I would prefer if anybody has anything to say that helps me know if I have an action item. Because I'm happy to work more on that, but
I do have one more question. I'm sorry. So the people who already have 95-gallon carts who are going to move to the new program of the every other week pickup, will there be an adequate inventory for the people who need to purchase an additional cart that's not part of this grant cart program?
We'll have inventory, but they would be purchased as kind of apart from the grant.
Sure.
Yeah.
When you just asked the question, Karen, about an action item, what kind of action item were you thinking about?
I guess I just mean, I went through and kind of tried to align that recommendation with what we're doing. So I guess I just want to know what the next step is. If we want to consider an action item to actually not be something for me, but something for the advisory committee to take to the board. Or should I go ahead and start working on what maybe a design looks like if we were going to present something to the board? I guess we haven't really done that yet, right? We haven't presented a recommendation that's designed.
From my standpoint, what I think I'm looking for is does the committee feel like that what we're doing right now, and do you want to make this the program to settle this recommendation based upon a pilot until further notice. So we would really kind of be telling the board that we're going to run this pilot, we're going to get some learnings, and then we're going to look at possibly extending this out into a further recommendation, you know, to expand on the recommendation. So this is kind of like a start, if that's what we're going to tell the board.
I think that's a great idea because I think you will learn a lot, and the things that we can think we know don't ever go exactly the way we think when we actually implement something. So I think getting as much data, I think things are so new. I think the door to door going into schools, all of that can look very different right now. So I think the worst thing that we could do is say, let's do it exactly this way. And I think that we should learn from what we're doing and how we're doing it and best practices to then be able to put something together for someone else to replicate.
Okay, so let me ask, would a task for staff from this subcommittee be to put together a presentation to the board in a document that basically says that for this recommendation, we recommend letting the Urban Services District distribution of recycling carts play out before we decide to go any further with this recommendation?
Well, play out to serve as a potential model for a broader
Yes.
program, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, much better said than I did. Yes.
Kim, would you like to make that as a motion?
Definitely. I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Adam. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Going forward, now we're talking about the recycling value of C&D
Miss-
separation of commodities, costs.
Miss
and
Sandra, I'm so
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you. Who seconded? Oh,
Adam.
Okay, thanks, Adam. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Okay, thank you.
Can you pull the agenda down, Diane, please?
Yes. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, so I guess this is me right here, 2, 3, and 4. And I will talk about these all together if that's okay. I had a pretty big discussion with David Wicking, who actually operated a C&D sorting facility for a time here in Jefferson County. And he has a really good idea of the cost, the values of the materials. One thing that I've learned is that you can't put a definite value on a commodity because commodity values fluctuate with the price of oil when it comes to shingles and stuff like that, but also just what the markets are at the time. So I am not sure that I can give an answer or a cost benefit analysis on the value of what C&D is. That's going in, you know, that is basically what's coming at the waste composition showed. What I will say is that he did identify to me as probably one of the biggest negatives or drivers of issues that cause problems is drywall. And drywall, while there is Matt Smith may be able to talk about drywall a little bit because I think it can be used as a soil amendment, but not just any drywall. So I think that was one of the things that made it difficult, was that there was a pretty good amount of drywall in that stream that made it a little bit tough. So I keep feeling like I'm kicking the can down the road on some of these things, as far as the commodities go. But I think that the answer to this will come when we have the stakeholders, which is number 3, and we have a better idea of what we're trying to recommend. So let me talk about the C&D stakeholders. So obviously, number 1 was Dave Wicking with his experience locally. Number 2, I've talked with people from the US GBC, which is the US Green Building, can't remember what the C was. Anyway, I talked with them, and they have turned me to other individuals within their organization to have a little bit further discussions as to what we want. They have not gotten back to me as of yet, but I'm going to follow up with them because it's been about a week or so, and to have that conversation with them. The next one was with Flynn Brothers. And I talked with their CEO or owner, and he was actually very interested in what we were doing. We had a really good conversation. He wasn't as familiar with it as another gentleman, Mr. Mossholder, that he's putting me in contact with. But, you know, in general, they were interested and very appreciative of the fact of being able to be, asked to be involved in something early instead of getting a regulation and you have to follow. Now, since then, it has become my understanding, and he kind of alluded to it a little bit, was there could be a conflict of interest. And honestly, I'm really disappointed with it because they actually do business with landfills. And so they're, if they're doing business with somebody and, it can be that if they participate in a certain manner, it worries them about contracts. So I don't want to put, I want their information, but I don't want to put them in a bad position, nor do I want to, and I want to make sure that things are straight and fair and that we're getting it. So what I would want to do is see if I can reach out and find a different stakeholder from the industry so that we're not putting them in that bad spot. They can still participate if they want, but I don't want to put them in a bad spot. And I want to make sure that there is no appearance of impropriety, even though I don't think that there would be. We've been down that road before. And then I think that the last part of that was after speaking with several of these individuals, what are we asking them to do? And what questions do we want them to help us answer? And, if we want them to come talk to us about certain things, I think that we would want to put 5 or 6 questions in front of them and let them have some time to think about these things so that they can give us a good response. And I'm wondering, what are some of the main things that we want them to answer for us? And then the next part of that is, in what forum do we want them to do it? We can have them, because this is a broader category at this point, should we have them come and talk to the full advisory committee so that everybody's kind of getting this same talk and same information? And then when the subcommittee can go into more details at our subcommittee meetings. So that is my kind of question to the subcommittee is, what specific questions do we want them to answer and come to talk to us about? And by the way, I think we have multiple haulers on here that can play that role as a stakeholder as well.
Adam?
Yeah, I did want to talk, and I think the last meeting I wasn't able to talk about this topic, but this is something that I am very familiar with. And the fact that I mean, I'm a dumpster service, so I'm constantly hauling this type of material in our dumpsters to various places. And also my parent company is Merle Bierman Excavating, and that's exactly the kind of work they do. That we demo buildings, site work, things like that. So this is a topic I'm very familiar with. But I feel like there's just not a whole lot of value, or the commodities that you're going to try to recycle in this process. Those commodities, in my opinion, they have no value. The only value that they have is diverting them from the landfill so that you don't have to potentially pay the landfills by the ton price. So
Hey, Adam,
yes,
can I jump in and maybe help you there?
sure.
They do have a value, no different than what trash has a value of negative $30 a ton in Louisville.
There you
The
go.
value roughly of the materials he's talking about is somewhere in the negative 20s. So it's less expensive to landfill it, but there's still a negative value to it.
Correct.
So-
I should have, I didn't consider a negative value, but yes, they are worth less money because of what you're going to have to do to make them worth anything whatsoever. One thing I want to make sure the committee or that you all understand, and I've kind of got the impression when we were talking about shingles a little bit, is that the form of recycling that we do is a little different than all other recycling. Most people think when you recycle something, you take a material to a company, they give you money for it, and then you take that money and that's what you get. Well, with shingles, with concrete, with asphalt, with what I'm familiar with or what I recycle, we don't pay you to take that material. We still charge you to dump that material, but we just charge you a fractional rate of what it would cost you to take it to a landfill and pay their $50 a ton, $25 a ton, whatever it might be.
A lot of recyclables are like that though, Adam, and a lot of people don't realize that. That is a very valid, I mean, residential is at a cost.
Yes. So that's where I think some people, and we get calls all the time. I have concrete. How much will you pay me for my load of concrete? Well, no, I'm not going to pay you anything.
Right.
You're going to pay
Yeah.
us. So
Mhm.
that being said, when you go into a C&D, a demo job, basically what that contractor's looking to do is they're looking to spend as little money at the landfill as possible. They want their landfill costs to be as little as possible. And what they're doing is they're trying to separate the steel out of there because steel has a value. And then the only other thing they really are trying to separate much out of there is hard fill. And hard fill is concrete, asphalt, brick, or dirt. Because the main reason that you want to separate that stuff out of there is because it's so heavy. It's what weighs the most. And the more you get that mixed in with your C&D, the higher the weight and the greater your landfill cost. So the greater the cost of doing that job. So for all contractors, it's beneficial to them to try to get all of that hard fill material separated out so that I would take it. Because I can't take a load of half concrete, half wood, or half demo, or half anything. In order for me to recycle concrete, shingles, anything, the most important thing is it has to be clean. It can't have trash mixed in it. The shingles can't have half the roof still on it. It has to be clean with no trash or debris in there in order for it to get recycled. And to me, the amount of time and effort that it takes to, like, let's say you're tearing a building and it has a shingle roof. you'll never recycle those shingles because the amount of time it would take you to strip the shingles off that roof, get them clean enough where you could bring it to me, and then tear the rest of that roof off, it would cost you 3 times the amount than to just throw it all in a dumpster and take it to the landfill. So I do understand the concept of trying to recycle everything that could possibly happen, that you possibly can. But I think from a contractor's point of view, the cost benefit of trying to sort all that stuff out is never, we're not even close right now to making that work. The only thing that I think people could do to where it would somewhat save a little money is if they had a load that was half concrete, half wood and stuff, you might be able to make enough money trying to separate that concrete out and then take the wood to the landfill. But even then, I think to dump it out, sort through it, reload it back up, you would have 3 times the amount of money in doing that than it would be to just take that load straight to the landfill.
Well, Adam, I agree with a lot of what you said. I think that when it was tried here, the actual, when at that time and at that commodities market, the cost was around a $28 a ton to sort using commodities to that can be sold. It's kind of like compost. You know, it is a negative cost, but you use the value of that material to offset the collection and stuff. So I guess it's going to depend upon the company. From a hauler standpoint, I can certainly, the bottom line is, how much is it going to cost me to tip? That's what is the most important. And from a separator, that is a company that can do separation, that is going to be set by the value of the commodities versus how much it costs them to separate. And, you know, in the past, that was in that $28 a ton, which is competitive with landfilling. So
Very competitive.
So I think, you know, when we start talking about commodities and the things that don't have any value or they have a negative value, some things like the metal actually help pay for things that don't have any value. It's on the bottom line, is this contractor going to be able to make money separating this material? And do they have enough feedstock and to make it go? And I think that's what we have to decide, whether if that dollar figure is 35 or 20. If it's 20, I guarantee you will have people wanting to open up a sorting facility and do it because they're going to get a little bit, they're going to make money. It's all about the bottom line on what the commodities are going to be versus how much it's going to cost them to separate it. The thing from the waste district standpoint is that we want to investigate that to see if that's where that point is, because if it could be that the waste district says drywall is an issue. If we can find a process to get drywall that can be recycled and it has a value that's less than landfilling, then it makes this whole process a whole lot better. So it could be that the committee wants to focus on a single material to find a source for recycling a single material that makes sorting everything a little bit better. I just don't think that we're there. I think that we need more investigation.
Have you talked to any other cities that have successful C&D programs?
I've not talked to any other cities. I do know that there are other cities that have this, but then again, their measuring stick is based upon a different landfill rate.
Yeah.
so therein, you know, it's hard to compare yourself to other cities because we're all different when it comes to the economics of solid waste in your area.
And that, to me, that landfill rate is the most important factor in wherever you're at, because you're only trying to reduce or divert that landfill cost is pretty much the entire key to trying to separate it. Is if a contractor realized that he could separate this out and it would significantly save him money from taking it to a landfill.
Right. So let's hypothetically say that we have a landfill rate of $30.
Okay.
If this separator can do it for 28, then it's something that he can do well. He can compete. If it's 50, it's not a viable business. Nobody's going to operate like that. But if it's 32, so it's a $2 difference, there's a pain point there. The waste district, if it so chooses, and it could target a regulation that required it, then $32, we're getting a lot of diversion for $2 a ton. What impact would that $2 a ton have on industry? And that is the pain point that we need to figure out. So it's all about the landfill rate, and it's all about the value of the commodities, and it's all about what it's going to cost to separate those commodities.
I agree with that completely. I mean, and and to be honest, if it got to be where it was that close, you would get that business. Or I think if someone could separate it out for $2 more than it would cost to take it to the landfill, location then becomes a factor, but you would get people to bring that stuff there. That would do it. But I just, from my experience and what I see and know, I don't think it's anywhere close. Just my opinion, I would say if the landfill's 30, I think it would cost a guy 60 or better to sort it. My opinion. But if the guy said he could do it for 28, I think he'd be in business today.
Adam,
Yes.
I was in the sorting business for a while, a memory that I would soon forget. And we could not sort for under 30 a ton. It wasn't 60. I think our costs were probably in the high 40s at that time. Now, it's been a little while, Pete. You remember that?
Yes, sir.
You know, commodity price, landfill price has zero to do with what it costs you to sort. The only thing that changes your sorting cost is labor cost and what you're sorting. The type of load you're sorting changes your sorting cost significantly, as you know that. But landfill cost as well as commodity cost has nothing to do with the sorting. It just offsets your sorting cost.
So you're making sure I'm understanding you, Matt. Let's take concrete, and let's say that you take it in. You're just taking in concrete, and you're charging $20 a ton, but to landfill that at $30 a ton. But you can sell it, and you can make $5 a ton off of it. I'm not sure if I'm able to explain it right. I don't have the ability to break it down like you guys do.
Sorting a ton of concrete is going to be cheaper than sorting a ton of feathers and plastic, just because 20 ton of concrete is going to fit in one semi load. If I have feathers and plastic, I'm going to have 5 semi loads of volume to equal 20 tons.
That's true.
So your
That's true.
densities play a big role in your cost, and how you calculate your cost per commodity is really an accountant's game because it changes the density. You know, wood is a prime example. It's pretty heavy. Whenever we were pulling out, drywall's heavy. When we were pulling out the plastics and some of the other stuff, it was light.
Right. And I think that most everything, I mean, there was a good percentage of the material that's common recyclables. They would end up going to a West Rock or a Rumpke, or a RMR. So that's your cardboard, and there's a lot of cardboard in there, you know, and cardboard does have a value, a very positive value. So that's one way that they're going to make some money. The wood is kind of like a compostable. If it's clean wood, if it's painted wood, then it's not good wood.
Right. One of the things that we found too, Pete, you know, cardboard was good. That's one of the better money makers that we found in there. But, you know, we thought we were going to get a lot of metal. But what we learned out real quick is that when metal prices were down, we got a lot of metal in the loads.
Right.
When metal prices were up, we didn't get much metal in the loads.
Yeah.
The drunks, the druggies, whoever got to it before we got to it and sold it to get their high. I don't know what happened to it, but it would disappear when the price got high.
It's the same with cardboard. People with a pickup truck pick up small bales and stuff outside of Walgreens and things like that. And even when they know they do it, but when the price is low, those people, it's not worth their time. And that, you know, you need a quality service.
Honestly, I love having discussions like this. I think it's very informing. And I do think that there's a value to moving forward with talking with people. And if I understood Dave Wicking right, drywall was a pretty big concern. And, you know, if we can pick two commodities that are an issue and we can find a viable market for it here, then we maybe solve that issue of why a sorting facility for C&D is not as valuable. But if we solve it, then it makes it a very viable business. It's jobs, and you know, everybody's happier.
Pete?
So, yes, sir.
Pete?
Yes, sir.
You know, we have been in and out of the drywall recycling business a couple of times over the years. And here just 2 weeks ago, I was talking to some people in Northern Indiana that recycle a fair amount of drywall. The difference between my area or our area and their area is 100% of the drywall they're recycling is coming from a drywall manufacturing facility and or new construction. So whenever we were getting the drywall in over there, I'm going to guess 50% of it was not from new construction. And the rules are that if it's not new construction, you have to have it tested to make sure it's not lead based and all this. Well, it's impossible for me to test every piece to say that it is or isn't.
Yeah.
Also, that same thing comes into play with shingles. Anytime I take a load of shingles in, I have to take a sample, have it tested for asbestos. So there again, that you may run into all kinds of things like that as to what you can take, what you can't take, where it came from. I think that, like Matt said, that's going to be a big factor also, is getting around your regulations or your environmental regulations to be able to do that.
We're definitely open to play with drywall again. We just got to have a better mousetrap than we did the first go around.
Well, I think that is a perfect example of one of the commodities that if we targeted and we looked at what that cost is, maybe it's a piece of equipment. And you go out and you get a grant for a piece of equipment that makes drywall recycling work here. But we don't know. But I think that by having, because I think this discussion, and I don't know about the people that are not in the industry, if they find this kind of a discussion beneficial, but I think having a roundtable with individuals such as you guys, I mean, you guys are stakeholders in this, and having a roundtable discussion with the committee, having 5 questions that we ask these people and have them comment, and then open it up to committee questions is a good way for us to learn what this is going to take. If it's a viable thing to do, or what other direction that we want to take, whether it's incrementally moving towards a C&D processing ordinance by targeting certain materials or not. I don't know. We don't know the answer to that.
What commodity would you select in addition to drywall?
Let me ask Matt Smith that. What other commodity in there is a problem?
In the drywall,
Not in
No.
the drywall, in the incoming stream, in the sorting business that you did.
of course, any wet waste was a problem to sort. Oh man, I need to go back and check my notes.
So the commodities basically that have some value in here is the concrete. We know it's got some value.
No.
It does not have value.
But it's got a negative. It's not a value that you're going to get paid for. But it's not as expensive as landfill. When I say
Right.
a value, it's less than landfilling.
Understand. Then you also have to get that somewhere. So that concrete that you sort out or recycle, you still have to truck to me or truck somewhere. So then there's cost also in doing something with that. That's my question too. Or like, what commodities or what do you think you're going to get out of that C&D load that you can separate out? What concrete is one thing. Drywall could potentially be another, even though I think that's going to be very difficult. What other?
Some of the bigger, surprisingly enough, we did not get a lot of concrete. And the reason is concrete is heavy enough that if anybody had much volume, they were silly to put it in the same dumpster. Put it in a different dumpster and take it directly to Adam. Same way with wood. If you had a bunch of volume, you didn't throw it in the dumpster. So it was mixed. The two biggest volumes we had was wood and drywall. Whenever you look at volume standpoint, besides the trash, cardboard, and then plastic was the other one. And the plastic was an assorted plastics. I'm going to put all of that together. I'm not saying from weight, I'm talking volume.
Mhm.
Wood may have been the largest by volume.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Adam, is that all of that cost, that shipping cost, that commodities cost, everything would be incorporated into that tipping price for any business. Obviously, they're going to have to take all that into account whenever they're setting their gate rate. So to
Sure.
speak.
Understood.
So that is the bottom line. What would the gate rate be? And we haven't even thrown in the economy into this, and how much is being generated at any given time. If we're in a building boom, it's probably a little bit more profitable because the material's clean. But if we're in a demolition, getting rid of old buildings, I don't know. Maybe those two come hand in hand. Maybe I'm wrong with that.
It sounds like this is a topic that we need to continue for the next meeting. We're almost due to close and there's still lots of unanswered issues. I think though, in all honesty, from coming on here and knowing nothing and listening to all of you now for a couple of years, I do see that we're actually moving forward in the discussion. Where the discussion that you all just did is much more specific and it's much more common sense related maybe than some of what I heard early on.
Well, and I think that this type of discussion, which I do enjoy, is something that, when we do a roundtable, it should include everybody, not just this subcommittee, because in the end, everybody's going to be involved in a decision when it comes to anything that comes out of this subcommittee. So you learn a whole lot by these discussions.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my ask is what is my takeaway here? And continue to pursue end users or, well, no, not end users, but stakeholders in general. And I'm going to try to focus on the process of sorting C&D material, and what that cost versus the value, and also possibly looking. I toyed around with it's the U.S. Council on Construction and Demolition Recycling. They're not local, but maybe they would have some insights. And if I think I have to join their association to be able to get into it, but I think that it might be worth the Waste District to pay for that registration to be able to do that. But try to get the right people at a roundtable discussion that we can have just like we did today, and see where we go. Should I continue to work towards that? And if you guys have any questions that you think that I should be asking, please let me know. And by the next subcommittee, we can maybe line out the questions and kind of firm up the potential stakeholders for the roundtable. Is that something that you guys would want me to do, or not, or different?
No, I think it sounds like all of you think that having a bunch of stakeholders of all different types would be very beneficial. And it sounds like that's what we're walking toward. We're just not ready for anything definitive at this moment because we don't know enough.
Mm. So where do you guys want me to go from here?
My one comment would be, we have a whole list of different topics that we're trying to analyze and find what's going to be the best thing to push forward to the committee. And there's other topics besides this one that also I think need some attention. Do you all feel that this particular topic is something we want to continue to focus attention on, or should we maybe look to a different one of the other topics that we've been tasked to look at as potentially something else that we may get somewhere with, or do you all think this is something that we should continue to stick with and look at? I would think that would be a question to pose, or my personal opinion is, like I said, I just think we're far away from this market being ready for something like this. Just my opinion. So that's what I would say. Is it worth continuing to work on this topic, or should we look at another one? Just open for conversation.
Anybody else have an opinion?
Is it a question for staff?
I almost think it's more a question for the committee itself.
Understood.
Us as a committee are tasked to figure out which of these topics we want to move forward with. We have spent, this will be our second meeting where we spent pretty much the entire meeting on this topic. So we definitely have time invested in that. Maybe it is worth continuing to look into it since we have invested some time in it, which I'm fine with. Or do we feel like that there's other topics out there that may be more beneficial for us to spend time on?
So what if, again, we could talk to some other C&Ds and find out about, I think that if we could get information from other C&D recycling facilities that are successful, we can use comparable markets to here to figure out. I just feel like their processing cost is going to be very high. That type of material is going to be very damaging to equipment. It's not going to be the same as single stream. So figuring out, I mean, I'm throwing these numbers out here because I have no idea. If it's $150 a ton to process something, well, that wouldn't make sense in this market, but maybe it makes sense that we really drive the separation of wood and concrete, and realize that we're not going to get the rest of the material at this particular time.
I agree with you, but how are we going to know that if we don't go forward a little bit more?
No, I agree. I think we have some additional research, but I think we need to talk to facilities that are currently doing this.
I could certainly bring something like that into the equation.
Maybe we should, like I said, we've spent so much time or a couple meetings on it. Maybe we should continue with the topic and try to, like I said, continue to discuss it, look into it a little further, and continue this. I'm fine with that. Like I said, this is very pertinent for what I do.
I'm not committee, but my recommendation is that we continue to pursue it, but we should always be looking at our other recommendations that, maybe Adam is right. There's something else that we could get a quicker win on while we continue to work on this. We don't have to
Well,
quit. I don't
to
think we have
some
to
extent,
quit.
we did that with the recycling cart grant, and we were talking about the expanded marketing and education. I mean, I don't think we've given up on those things. And I think if I'm right, Adam, I think one of your major concerns is that we're going to devote a lot of time to this, and it's not going to come and have a practical economic solution if we're talking about all C&D materials. And that's a solution in itself if we determine that we can't make a recommendation that deals with all C&D materials.
I agree.
So I think we just agreed with you.
Okay. Well, I will continue to work on this issue, and I think it's a good idea next time that we pull up the impact effort matrix and have another look. It's a checkpoint, and I think Adam's absolutely right. I think we always should be evaluating what we're doing to something that if we can go a different direction, we should.
Anything else on this subject? Then I'm sorry. We're at public input. Is there anybody who wants to turn on items not retaining to the agenda? If not, our next meeting will be May 11th at 2:00. And thank you all. I think it was a very good discussion.
Agree.
Can I have a motion for adjournment? Matt, thank you. Matt's a first. Adam's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.